Vex stood before the massive window in her father's office, watching the stars shine through the crystal walls of the. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow less brightly than usual, and the small crystals that grew along her arms looked dull and gray. She felt sick to her stomach, though her people rarely felt such things. "The decision has been made," her father said behind her. His voice was cold and logical as always. "You will bond with the human representative. The ceremony will happen in 1 month." Closed her eyes. She had known this day would come, but she had hoped it would be different. She had hoped she would marry someone from her own people, or maybe one of the wise who lived for thousands of years. Anyone but a human. "Father, surely there must be another way," she said, turning to face him. High Arbiter sat behind his desk, his tall frame perfectly still. His own crystals glowed with the steady light of someone who never doubted himself. "There is no other way," he replied. "The Void Collective grows stronger every day. They have already destroyed 3 colonies in the Outer Rim. We need the human fleet, and they have made their price clear. A marriage bond between our species will seal the alliance." Felt her crystals dim even more. The Void Collective was a terrible enemy that seemed to eat everything in its path. Ships, planets, entire star systems would simply disappear when they arrived. The galaxy needed to work together to stop them, but the cost felt too high. "But why me?" she asked. "I am not even trained for this kind of work." "You are my daughter," said. "You speak 6 languages. You have studied alien cultures at the academy. Most importantly, you are young enough to adapt to their strange ways." Strange ways. Had read about humans in her studies, and everything she learned made her more afraid. Humans were violent creatures who solved problems by fighting. They felt emotions so strongly that it made them unpredictable and dangerous. They lived such short lives that they made hasty decisions without thinking about the consequences. "What if he hurts me?" she whispered. Her father's expression did not change. "The humans have given their word that no harm will come to you. If they break this promise, the alliance ends." Knew that was supposed to make her feel better, but it did not. The humans might keep their word about not hurting her body, but what about her mind and spirit? How could she survive being bonded to a creature that might explode with rage at any moment? "The transport leaves tomorrow," continued. "You will travel to Earth Station 7, where you will meet your intended. His name is. He holds the rank of captain in their military forces." A soldier. Of course he was a soldier. Crystals turned almost black with fear. She had seen videos of human soldiers in action during their wars. They moved like wild animals, shouting and firing weapons without any thought for elegance or proper form. The idea of being touched by such a creature made her want to hide in her room forever. "I have prepared files for you to study during the journey," her father said, sliding a data pad across the desk. "Learn everything you can about human customs. The success of this alliance depends on your ability to satisfy your husband." The word husband felt strange and wrong in her mouth. In culture, bonding was a logical decision made by families to strengthen bloodlines and share resources. There was respect and duty, but not the wild emotions that humans seem to feel. She had always imagined she would bond with someone calm and intelligent, someone who would appreciate her work and treat her as an equal partner. Instead, she would be given to a human who probably thought of her as a prize to be won or a tool to be used. She had read that human males often treated their females as property, making decisions for them and controlling their lives. The thought made her feel cold inside. "How long will I have to stay with him?" she asked. "The bond is permanent," her father replied. "You will live among the humans for as long as the alliance requires it, perhaps for the rest of your life." Felt like the world was spinning around her. The rest of her life. She was only 200 years old, still young by standards. She could live for another 800 years or more. All of that time spent with a violent, emotional creature who did not understand her people or her ways. "I understand this is difficult," said, and for a moment his voice sounded almost gentle. "But remember that you serve a greater purpose. This alliance will save millions of lives. Your sacrifice will be remembered and honored." Sacrifice. That was exactly what this was being sacrificed to save her people, fed to the humans like a peace offering to keep them happy and fighting on the right side of the war. She picked up the data pad and held it against her chest. "I will do my duty," she said, because that was what she had been trained to say her whole life. "I know you will," her father replied. "You are stronger than you know, daughter. The humans may be strange, but they are not evil. Try to remember that." Nodded and left the office, walking slowly through the crystal corridors toward her room. Others she passed looked at her with sympathy. Word had already spread about her fate. Some of them touched her shoulder or whispered kind words, but she barely heard them. In her room, she sat on her sleeping platform and opened the data pad. Pictures of humans filled the screen, along with notes about their behavior and customs. They looked so different from her people, with their soft skin and round features. Their eyes held emotions that seemed to burn like fire. She found a file about Captain and opened it with shaking hands. The image showed a man with dark hair and serious brown eyes. He was not as large as some humans she had seen, but his shoulders looked strong and his jaw was set in a firm line. He looked like someone who was used to giving orders and having them followed. The file said he had fought in several human wars and earned many honors for bravery. It mentioned that he was skilled in combat and strategy. There was nothing about whether he was kind or cruel, patient or angry. Nothing about how he treated the people around him when no one was watching. Closed the pad and lay down on her platform. Tomorrow she would begin the journey to her new life, to a world where everything would be different and scary. She would have to learn to live with a creature she did not understand, in a place that felt nothing like home. Her crystals glowed with the deep blue of sadness as she tried to imagine what her future would hold. The journey to Earth Station 7 took 3 days, and spent every moment of it studying the files her father had given her. She learned about human greeting customs, their eating habits, and their strange need to touch each other when they talked. Everything seemed designed to make her more nervous than she already was. When the transport finally docked at the human station, felt her crystals dim to almost nothing. The station looked nothing like the elegant spires of her. It was made of gray metal and sharp angles, with bright lights that hurt her eyes. Even the air smelled different here, full of strange chemicals and unfamiliar scents. A human woman in a blue uniform met her at the airlock. "Welcome to Earth Station 7, Ambassador," she said with a smile. "I am Lieutenant Martinez. Captain is waiting to meet you in Conference Room C." Followed the lieutenant through corridors filled with humans rushing back and forth. They all looked so busy and loud, calling out to each other and moving with quick, jerky motions. Nothing like the calm, measured pace of her own people. "The captain wanted me to tell you that he's arranged quarters for you according to preferences," Lieutenant Martinez said as they walked. "He spent quite a bit of time researching your people's needs." This surprised. She had expected to be given whatever room was available, with no thought for her comfort. The fact that this had bothered to learn about her people's needs was unexpected. They stopped at a door marked with symbols she could not read. Lieutenant Martinez pressed her hand to a panel, and the door slid open. "Good luck," she said with another smile, then left standing alone in the doorway. The man sitting at the table inside was definitely from the files, but he looked different in person. He was not as tall as she had expected, though still much larger than any. His dark hair was neat and his uniform was clean, but there was something gentle about his eyes that the pictures had not captured. When he saw her, he stood up immediately. For a moment, froze, expecting him to rush toward her or demand something. Instead, he stayed where he was and spoke in careful, slow words. "Hello, my name is, I am honored to meet you." He pronounced her name correctly, which shocked her, Most aliens could not manage the proper sounds. "Hello," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit wherever you feel comfortable. Would you like something to drink? I have water, or I could ask for tea if you prefer." Blinked in surprise. Tea was a traditional drink made from crystals that grew only on her. How did he know about it? How did he even know she might want it? "Tea would be nice," she said, still standing by the door. Pressed a button on the table. "Lieutenant Martinez, could you bring some tea to conference room C, please? Thank you." He looked back at and noticed she was still standing. "I'm sorry, am I making you uncomfortable? I can sit down if you prefer." This was not what she had expected at all. Where was the demanding soldier who would bark orders at her? Where was the violent human who would grab her and drag her around like property? This man was asking her permission and worrying about her comfort. Slowly moved to the chair and sat down. Sat as well, but he kept his distance and his hands on the table where she could see them. Everything about his body language seemed designed to make her feel safe. "I know this situation is difficult for you," said quietly. "I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you right now. We don't have to rush into any ceremonies or bonding rituals. I thought we could just talk first, maybe get to know each other a little." Stared at him. You want to talk?" "If that's okay with you," replied. "I'd like to understand who you are as a person, what you enjoy doing, what you're interested in, what you hope for in the future. I know our species are very different, but I believe we can find common ground if we try." Lieutenant Martinez returned with a steaming cup of tea and wrapped her hands around it gratefully. The familiar smell made her feel a little more at home. She took a sip and felt her crystals brighten slightly. "You studied my people's customs," she said. It was not a question. Nodded. "I've been learning about culture for the past 2 months. I know it's not the same as actually living it, but I wanted to understand as much as I could. I learned that your people value logic and careful thought. I learned that you need specific kinds of light to be healthy, and that you prefer cooler temperatures than most humans." "Why did you do that?" asked. The question came out sharper than she had meant it to, but she genuinely could not understand his motivation. "Because I respect you," said simply. "You're going to be my partner, hopefully for a very long time. I want you to be happy and comfortable. I want you to feel like you can be yourself around me." Partner, not property, not prize, not tool. Partner. Had never heard a male use that word before when talking about bonding. "What about the alliance?" she asked. "Isn't that more important than my happiness?" Was quiet for a moment, thinking about his answer. "The alliance is important," he said finally. "A lot of lives depend on it, but I don't think it will work if we're both miserable. The best partnerships are built on mutual respect and understanding. If we can find that, we'll be stronger together than we would be apart." Studied his face, looking for signs that he was lying or trying to trick her. But his eyes were steady and honest, and his voice never changed from that calm, gentle tone. He seemed to actually mean what he was saying. "Tell me about your work," continued. "I read that that must be fascinating." And to his amazement, he actually listened when she started to talk. She told him about her research on crystal-based life forms, and he asked intelligent questions. When she mentioned her studies of human biology, he laughed and offered to help her understand anything that confused her. "You know," he said after they had been talking for over an hour, "I was nervous about meeting you too." "You were." Could not imagine this confident human being afraid of anything. "Of course," replied. "I was worried I would say something wrong or accidentally offend you. Your people have such a rich culture, and I'm just a simple soldier. I wasn't sure I would be good enough for someone as intelligent and accomplished as you." Not good enough for her. Had spent days worrying that she would not be good enough for him, that he would find her weak or boring. The idea that he had the same fears made him seem much more real and much less frightening. "I think," she said slowly, that maybe we both have a lot to learn about each other. Smiled, and for the first time since leaving her, smiled back. Over the next 2 weeks, spent several hours each day with. They met in different places around the station, sometimes in meeting rooms, sometimes in the observation deck, and once in the hydroponics bay where he showed her how humans grew food in space. Each day brought new surprises. Never raised his voice, even when other humans around them were being loud and emotional. He always asked for her opinion before making decisions that affected both of them. Most shocking of all, he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. "I don't understand human emotions," admitted one day as they sat watching ships come and go through the large windows of the observation deck. "My people feel things, but not like you do. Everything is so intense with humans." Nodded thoughtfully. "We do feel things strongly," he said, "but maybe that's not always a bad thing." "How can it be good?" asked. "I have watched humans argue and shout at each other. I have seen them make decisions based on anger or sadness instead of logic. It seems very dangerous." "It can be," agreed. "But it can also help us understand when someone is in pain or when something is wrong that logic might miss." As if to prove his point, a young human woman walked past them with tears running down her face. His instinct was to look away and give the female privacy, as any would do, but stood up immediately. "Excuse me," he said gently to the crying woman. "Are you all right? Is there anything I can do to help?" The woman looked surprised. "Oh, Captain, I didn't see you there. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't be crying in public spaces." "Don't apologize," said firmly. "What's wrong?" Through her tears, the woman explained that her family lived on one of the outer colonies, and she had just received news that Void Collective scouts had been seen in their system. She was terrified that her parents and younger brother would be hurt or killed before help could arrive. Listened to every word, his face serious and concerned. When she finished talking, he pulled out a small device and made a call. "Admiral, this is Captain. I need you to check the status of Fleet Group 7. Yes, I'll hold." He turned back to the crying woman. "What's your name?" "Ensign Lisa Park, sir." "Well, Ensign Park, let me see what I can find out for you." After a few minutes of quiet conversation with the Admiral, smiled and put the device away. "Good news. Fleet Group 7 is already moving toward your system. They should arrive within 12 hours, well before any Void Collective ships could get there. Your family will be safe." The relief on Lisa's face was immediate and overwhelming. "Thank you, Captain. Thank you so much." After she left, stared at in confusion. "Why did you do that?" "Do what?" "Help her. She is not your responsibility." Her fear was not logical, since worrying would not change anything. "Why did you waste time making her feel better?" Was quiet for a moment. "Because she was scared and I could help," he said finally. "Because maybe her fear wasn't logical, but it was real, and real feelings deserve attention. And because helping each other is what makes us stronger as a group." Thought about this for a long time. In society, everyone was expected to handle their own emotions without bothering others. But she had to admit that Lisa looked much better after talking to, and she would probably do her job better now that she was not worried about her family. "Your emotions make you want to protect each other," she said slowly. "Yes," replied, "that's exactly right." A few days later, got to see this protective instinct in action on a much larger scale. She was visiting in his office when alarms started ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and a voice announced that hostile ships had been detected approaching the station. "Pirates," said grimly as he looked at the information on his screen. 3 ships, well armed. They probably think we're an easy target because we're a diplomatic station." Felt her crystals turn dark with fear. She had never been in a real battle before. "What do we do?" "You're going to the secure shelter with the other non-military personnel," said, standing up and checking his weapon. "I need to get to the command center." But what about the bonding ceremony? Asked, surprised by her own question. If I die, the Alliance stopped and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. His eyes were fierce and protective, but also gentle. You're not going to die, he said firmly. I promise you that. I will keep you safe. How can you promise that? Asked. You cannot control what happens in battle. Watch me, said. The next few hours were terrifying for her. She sat in the shelter with dozens of other people, listening to the sounds of weapons fire and explosions coming through the station's hull. But she also heard his voice over the communication system, calm and steady as he gave orders to defend the station. Squad 3, move to protect the civilian areas. Squad 5, make sure the shelter has clear escape routes. All ships, priority 1 is keeping the pirates away from non-combatants. Even in the middle of a battle, he was thinking about protecting the people who could not protect themselves. Realized that this was what human military training really taught them, not how to kill enemies, but how to save the innocent. When the fighting finally ended and the pirates had been driven away, was the first person to come to the shelter. His uniform was torn and dirty, and he had a cut on his forehead, but his eyes immediately found in the crowd. Is everyone all right? He called out. Anyone hurt? After checking on all the civilians, he made his way over to where was sitting. Are you okay? He asked softly. You're not injured. Shook her head. I am fine, but you are bleeding. Touched the cut on his forehead and shrugged. Just a scratch. The important thing is that everyone is safe. You kept your promise, said, looking up at him with new understanding. I told you I would, replied. I don't make promises I can't keep. Later that night, after the station had been repaired and the wounded had been treated, found sitting alone in the observation deck. He was staring out at the stars, and his shoulders looked tired. Are you all right? She asked, sitting down beside him. Just thinking, said. 3 people were hurt today because of those pirates, good people who were just doing their jobs. But you saved everyone, pointed out. The pirates could have killed many more people if you had not been here. Maybe, said, but I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. Maybe if I had spotted them sooner or positioned our defenses better. Studied his face in the starlight. You are blaming yourself for things that went wrong, instead of celebrating the things that went right. I guess I am, admitted. That is very human, said softly, and also very good. Looked at her in surprise. Good. You care so much about protecting others that you will torture yourself over every mistake, explained. My people would analyze what went wrong and file a report, but we would not feel pain about it. We would not lose sleep thinking about the people who were hurt. Your emotions make you suffer, but they also make you try harder to do better next time. I never thought about it that way, said. I am starting to think, said carefully, that maybe your emotions are not a weakness at all. Maybe they are your greatest strength. Smiled at her, and in that moment, felt something new stirring in her own chest. It was warm and strange and completely illogical, but it made her crystals glow brighter than they had in weeks. For the first time since leaving her, she was not afraid of the future. 3 weeks into stay on Earth Station 7, everything changed in a single moment. She was having breakfast with when his communication device started screaming with urgent alerts. His face went pale as he read the messages flooding in. What is it? Asked, seeing the fear in his eyes. The Void Collective, said quietly. They've attacked 3 colonies. The assault started 6 hours ago. Felt her crystals go completely dark. 3 colonies meant millions of her people. Families, children, scientists, artists, all gone or running for their lives. Which colonies? Checked his device again. New and, he paused, his face growing even more concerned. I'm sorry, one of them is Eth. Isn't that where your cousin lives? Eth's cousin Ra lived there with her bonded partner and their 3 young children. Sweet, brilliant Ra, who had always been more like a sister than a cousin. tried to call her immediately, but the communication lines to the colony were down. "We have to help them," said, standing up so quickly that she knocked over her chair. "The Alliance, when will the human fleet arrive to help?" Looked uncomfortable. "The Alliance isn't active yet. We haven't completed the bonding ceremony. Technically, we have no obligation to help." "No obligation," stared at him in shock. "Those are my people dying out there." "I know," said gently, "and I want to help them. But the politicians back on Earth are saying we can't commit our forces until the marriage bond is official. They're worried about starting a war without the legal protections the Alliance would give us." Felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce like the emotions she had seen humans display. "So they will let my people die for paperwork?" "Some of them, yes," admitted, "but not all of us think that way." Over the next few hours, learned that the political situation was even more complicated than she had realized. The human government was split between those who wanted to help immediately and those who insisted on following proper procedures. Every minute they argued was another minute her people suffered. That evening came to find her in her quarters, was sitting on her sleeping platform, staring at a small crystal sculpture her cousin had given her years ago. She had been trying to reach Ra all day with no success. "I have news," said softly. "The Human Council has made a decision. They will activate the fleet and send help to your colonies, but only if we complete the bonding ceremony within the next 12 hours. Looked up at him. 12 hours. "The ceremony can be simple," continued. "Just the legal requirements witnessed by our respective ambassadors. No celebration, no big event, just the words that make it official." Nodded slowly. She had always known this moment would come, but she had hoped for more time to prepare herself mentally. "Then we will do the ceremony tomorrow morning." But did not move toward the door. Instead, he sat down across from her, his expression serious and thoughtful. "Before we do this, I need to tell you something important." "What?" "You have a choice," said quietly, "a real choice." Frowned in confusion. "I do not understand. The choice was made long ago. We must bond to save my people." "No," said firmly. "You can choose what kind of bond this is." He took a deep breath before continuing. "We can do this as a purely political arrangement. We sign the papers, go through the ceremony, and then live as formal partners who respect each other but nothing more. You would have your own quarters, your own life. We would work together on diplomatic matters, but our personal relationship would be professional." Felt her crystals brighten slightly. That option sounded safe and logical. "And the other choice?" "We make it real," said simply. "We try to build an actual partnership. We share our lives, support each other's dreams, maybe even," he paused, looking embarrassed, "maybe even learn to love each other." The word love hung in the air between them. Had studied human concepts of love, but she had never expected anyone to offer it to her. In culture, bonding was about compatibility and shared goals. Love was considered a pleasant bonus if it happened, but not something to plan for. "Why are you giving me this choice?" asked. "Because you deserve to have control over your own life," replied. "Because forcing someone into a relationship they don't want never ends well. And because," he looked down at his hands, "because I've gotten to know you over these past weeks, and I think you're amazing. You're intelligent and thoughtful and stronger than you realize. If you chose the real partnership, I would consider myself the luckiest human alive." Felt that warm feeling in her chest again, stronger this time. "You would want that, even though I am so different from human females." "Especially because you're different," said with a smile. "You see things I would never notice. You think about problems in ways that never occur to me. You make me want to be better than I am." "But what about children?" asked. "Humans and cannot have offspring together. Would that not make you sad?" Was quiet for a moment. "There are many ways to build a family," he said finally. "We could adopt children who need homes. We could mentor young people from both our species. We could create something new together, even if it's not biological children. Stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her cousin and millions of others were fighting for their lives. Tomorrow she would bond with this human to save them, but tonight she had to decide what kind of life she wanted to build afterward. "Tell me about human love," she said without turning around. "It's," struggled with the words. "It's choosing someone every day. It's wanting them to be happy even when it's inconvenient for you. It's feeling like you're stronger together than you could ever be apart." "It sounds frightening," admitted. "It is," agreed, "but it's also the most wonderful thing I've ever experienced." Turned to face him. "You have been in love before." "Once," said softly, "with another soldier during the war with the Republic. She died in battle before we could get married." "I am sorry," said, and she meant it. The pain in his eyes was clear even to someone who was still learning to read human emotions. "Her death taught me something important," continued. "Life is short and uncertain. When you find someone special, someone who makes you want to be your best self, you should hold on to them. You should fight for that connection." Felt her crystals pulsing with soft, warm light. "And you think I am someone special?" "I know you are," said without hesitation. Closed her eyes and thought about everything that had happened since she arrived at the station. Had surprised her at every turn, showing kindness when she expected cruelty, offering respect when she expected domination. He had protected her during the pirate attack, listened to her ideas about xenobiology, and now he was giving her the choice to control her own destiny. When she opened her eyes, was still watching her with that gentle, patient expression she had come to love. "Wait, love. I think," said slowly, "that I would like to try the real partnership." The smile that spread across face was brighter than any star. "Really?" "Really," confirmed, feeling her own crystals glow with happiness. "I think my cousin would tell me to choose love over fear." Stood up and took a step toward her, then stopped. "May I hug you? Is that acceptable in your culture?" Instead of answering, stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. He was warm and solid and smelled like something safe and familiar. For the first time since leaving her, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. "Tomorrow we save my people," she whispered against his shoulder. "Tomorrow we save your people," agreed, holding her close. "And then we start building our future together." The bonding ceremony took place 12 hours later in the station's largest meeting room. Representatives from both species were present, along with senior human military officers and diplomats who had arrived during the night. The room was filled with tension and hope in equal measure. Wore traditional bonding robes that shimmered with embedded crystals, while wore his formal military dress uniform. They stood facing each other as High Arbiter spoke the ancient words of binding, his voice carrying across space through quantum communication. "Do you, of Earth, accept the responsibility of partnership with Vexov, to stand with her in times of peace and conflict, to honor her mind and spirit, and to work together for the benefit of both your peoples?" "I do," said clearly, his eyes never leaving his face. When it was time for the human portion of the ceremony, Admiral stepped forward, but held up his hand. "If I may," he said, "I would like to add something to the traditional words." The Admiral nodded, looking curious, turned back to and took her hands in his. He said softly, "I promise not just to be your partner in this alliance, but to be your friend, your supporter, and your companion. I promise to learn about your culture and respect your traditions. I promise to listen when you speak and trust your wisdom. And I promise to love you not despite our differences, but because of them." The room was completely silent. No one had expected such personal words in what was supposed to be a simple political ceremony. Felt her crystals glowing so brightly that everyone could see their light through her robes. She replied, her voice strong and clear, "I promise to stand beside you as an equal partner. I promise to share my knowledge and learn from yours. I promise to trust in your kindness and honor your emotions. And I promise to choose love over fear every day for the rest of our lives." When they pressed their palms together in the traditional gesture of bonding, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the communication device in Admiral's pocket chimed with an urgent message. "The fleet is moving," he announced with a grin. "All ships are jumping to hyperspace now. They'll reach the colonies within 6 hours." The relief in the room was immediate and overwhelming. But even as people celebrated around them and only had eyes for each other, the human fleet arrived at Eth just as the Void Collective was preparing for their final assault on the colony's main city. The battle was fierce but short. Human ships fought with a determination that surprised even their allies, protecting civilians with the same intensity they would show defending Earth itself. Within 3 days, all 3 colonies had been saved. The Void Collective retreated to the dark spaces between stars, their expansion halted for the first time since they had appeared in the galaxy. But the real victory was just beginning. And returned to Earth Station 7 as heroes, but they were more interested in building their new life together. Moved into quarters, and they spent hours each day learning about each other's worlds and ways of thinking. Their partnership quickly became famous throughout both their species. Other diplomats watched in amazement as the human and worked together, combining logical analysis with emotional understanding to solve problems that had seemed impossible. "You see patterns I miss," told one day as they worked on new trade agreements between human and alien worlds. "Your logical approach helps me think more clearly. And your empathy helps me understand the feelings behind the facts," replied. "Together, we can see the whole picture." Their success led to requests for help from other species. The elders, who had lived for thousands of years and thought they had seen everything, asked, and to help negotiate a peace treaty with their ancient enemies. The crystalline hired them to resolve a trade dispute that had lasted for decades. Every problem they solved together made both humans and aliens more curious about cross-species cooperation. Soon, other mixed partnerships began forming across the galaxy, not forced political marriages like theirs had originally been, but voluntary bonds based on mutual respect and affection. "We're starting something new," said one evening as they walked through the station's hydroponics bay. The plants there now included both earth flowers and crystal gardens, growing together in the same soil. "Something good," agreed, watching the way earth ivy wrapped gently around light crystals, each species making the other more beautiful. 2 years later, they received news that changed everything. Ra's cousin, who had survived the Void Collective attack, sent a message that made laugh and cry at the same time. "What is it?" asked, seeing her emotional reaction. "Ra is bonding with a human engineer," explained through happy tears. "Someone she met during the colony reconstruction. She says they fell in love working together to rebuild the crystal gardens." Grinned, "Are we starting a trend?" "I think we are," said, and kissed him on the cheek. The wedding invitation arrived 3 months later, along with a note from Ra that made crystals glow with pride. "Thank you for showing us that love can bridge any gap between species. Your courage gave me the strength to follow my own heart." On the day of Ra's wedding, and stood as honored witnesses, while a female and a human male promised to love each other across the vast differences between their species. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by millions of beings who were beginning to understand that diversity could be a source of strength rather than division. After the ceremony, and walked together through new, rebuilt gardens. The city was more beautiful than it had been before the attack, with human architecture blending seamlessly with crystal structures. "Do you ever regret it?" asked quietly as they stopped beside a fountain that sparkled with both water and liquid light. "Choosing this life instead of a simple political arrangement?" Considered the question seriously, as she always did. Around them, children played with human children, their laughter mixing in the air like music from different worlds, creating a new song together. "Never," she said finally. "You taught me that fear and love cannot exist in the same heart. When I chose love, I became braver than I ever thought possible." "You taught me that logic and emotion work better together than apart," replied. "You made me wiser." They stood together watching the sunset paint the crystal spires in shades of gold and purple. In the distance, mixed crews of humans and aliens worked side by side on new construction projects. In the schools, children of different species learned each other's languages and customs. In the hospitals, doctors from across the galaxy shared knowledge to heal anyone who needed help. "The Void Collective is still out there," said softly. "They will come back someday." "Let them come," said, taking her hand. "They think they can win by consuming everything in their path, but they don't understand what we've learned." "What have we learned?" Smiled and squeezed her hand. "That the strongest force in the galaxy isn't fear or hunger or the need to destroy. It's the choice to love someone different from yourself and to build something beautiful together." Looked around at the thriving city, at the children playing together, at the couples of different species walking hand in hand through the gardens. All of this had started with two frightened people who chose to trust each other instead of giving in to fear. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now after 2 years of practice. "I love you too, Vex," he replied, using the combined name she had chosen after their bonding. As the stars came out above them, lighting the crystal gardens with their ancient glow, thought about the young, terrified female who had left her 2 years ago. That version of herself would never have believed this future was possible. A future where love conquered fear, where differences became strengths, and where two species learned to build something greater together than either could achieve alone. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of hope. And hope, had learned, was the most human gift of all.